Hey folks, Steve here with another Nations in Arms video. At last, we are in the last year of the scenario for the War of the First Coalition, the first coalition. And the game situation is perilous for both sides, in danger of losing the game. But I think it's just going to come down to some tricky die rolls that could go either way, that could decide the game. So talking quickly about where the different sides are situated for the final run of things. We're going to have the British, one Anglo-Dutch army operating out of Holland that is going to be quite potent. Um, so potent, in fact, that I forgot to build the Dutch units that need to go into that army. And boy, that is a fearsome looking army. Yeah, wow. 10 steps in that army. So very large British Dutch army here, a smaller British army here that's going to look to walk across the straits there unless contested. And again, the British army on the continent in Holland itself is very strong. So its goal is going to be to head south, liberate Flanders for coalition control, and hold it. Because if they can keep the French from attaining victory and they hold Flanders, France will lose the scenario. I mean, the revolution will live on, but they will do so without Flanders. So, critical thing for them. Contesting the northern front is the Spanish French army, or the Army of Spain, which is really the home defense army that has not a it's an okay sized force, two infantry corps and some cuirassiers. Will that be enough to fend off the British and to win that theater? Probably not, but we'll see. In Germany, we have a few scattered units now behind the main French army in the region. These are basically reinforcements, miners that have been recruited, and then Massena controlling the army of Germany in Munich. But opposite are the Bavarians that are still in it. They're hanging out in their last fortress of Bavaria. And then Wurmser is here with a newly built Bohemian army that is quite strong by itself and could very likely be pushing the French back out of Bavaria. There's also a smaller reinforcement stack commanded by Hohenzollern in Innsbruck. And then we still have Charles down here in Mantua. He's gotten a little bit of reinforcements from the army rules that can get additional steps replenished. And then we've got Württemberg, who's going to bring in some reinforcements from the east. So the Austrians, I think, in this situation, I mean, they probably can't save Switzerland if the French go after it, and they very likely will. But they can try to keep Germany from taking Romagna and Lombardy in northern Italy. They just have to contest it. If they can keep the French from taking it during these campaign seasons, that will be enough for at least a draw. So that's kind of the strategic situation for the coalition. The British need to deliver victory for the coalition, and the Austrians need to make sure that the French don't win. It's sort of two different halves of the puzzle. For the French on these theaters, or rather for Napoleon in northern Italy, because I guess that's the only other theater I didn't talk about. Joubert can be reinforcements, but he is going to lead a small campaign to take Zurich and take Switzerland out. That's needed. They did conquer Geneva last turn or last year, so they can do that. Custine has command of some reinforcements that are coming in, and my bad, they're actually in Turin, not this strange spot. They're right there. I don't know why I did that. So they're here, and they will kind of swing over and be added to Napoleon's stack that is at Milan. Again, opposite Mantua with Charles there. And likewise, Napoleon's advantage, because he's got two armies with him, the army of Italy and the Army of the North, which I should probably have swapped those counters around and redesignated things, but oh well. So yeah, this is the final lineup. So we have to take Zurich, we have to win the Italian front, and we have to defend and hold Flanders. And actually, to win, if France wants to win outright, they need to get Switzerland, they need to get these provinces right here in northern Italy, and they'll need to make sure that they have control of Flanders, and they take Holland back. They take Amsterdam from the coalition after the British dropped in on them last time, and they have to make sure they don't lose really anything else, which is going to be tricky. I suspect we're going to see a draw at the end of all of this, but well, the dice could show us something very different. So we're going to play it through. I haven't done the card stuff yet, but we'll do the cards, we'll get that situated, and we'll start playing through 1797, the final year of this scenario. Okay, what a gangbuster spring it's been. So, a number of activities have gone on. Hard to recount them all in the weaving nature of the conflict, but focus on a couple of things. Switzerland is down, so Joubert has succeeded in his mission, and has now restocked Zurich with a steppe, and it's basically conquered. So that much is done. In the south, a number of wheeling events occurred here back and forth, where the reinforcements moved up into Mantua. Bonaparte swung down and took Boulogne with weakened forces, but he's kind of safe behind the river and through Mantua. Massena abandoned the Bavarian front because Wurmser attacked, lost, and became demoralized, which freed Massena up to head south. He took Innsbruck and kept heading south on his activations to get down to here and reinforce Mantua. And basically, Charles has tried to get back into Mantua and is failing. So it's sort of looking like, just as how things are panning out, that the southern front in Italy, northern Italy, is going basically to be, and I forgot to move the Naples units. Gee whiz. Probably should have done that. Well, yeah, all right, they moved. So this is pretty much done. If the French forces in the south, Bonaparte and Massena, can quickly try to overrun Charles, because his supply path is basically through Venice at this point, could see, basically that whole theater wrapped up, and it's only just getting to summer, so there's some time to play with, but the armies are already exhausted. I mean, it was, we didn't draw the winter quarters enough times until the very end, and we fought out every bit that we could, including a forced march card play by the French. So this allows basically a third activation, though you get some attrition for it. The critical things that occurred, I think, are that the Austrians lost, became demoralized, and have suffered some attrition. And critically, the gambit by Pichegru up here, he used the forced march. The British have taken Antwerp, so they are presently putting the French in potentially a lose position, but Pichegru, which could be the most important die roll of the game, did a forced march. The British accepted combat at Antwerp, thinking, they were advantaged, but this was sort of the long shot. And of course, the French rolled boxcars, but they didn't have as many, the British had a lot more modifiers, so the French did win. The British became demoralized and suffered some attrition, and they're kind of down and out. And the French would really need to be able to push into Holland to get a true victory. The problem is the other British army, which at this point only has two steps, commanded by Pakenham, is starting to besiege Lille. They only just started. So our poor buddy here, Pichegru in the north, the Spanish army, the home defense army, just doesn't have enough oomph probably to go around and tackle everything he needs to tackle. The only other shot would be to get some sort of reinforcements headed north, but they're too far away. Maybe by winter we could see something happen there, but it's going to be a really near run thing, I think, for all of this. A lot of running, speeding, and hoping is going to have to occur to get anywhere near where I think we're really going to need to be to win as the French. So it's going to come down to the wire here, but we'll head into summer next. Well, here we are at the end of summer, and I would call this the bloody summer of 1797. Um, just a, there's a lot to cover here, guys. I know that some folks don't like these abbreviated forms of videos where I don't show all the action. The reality is we would be here forever if I didn't do this right now, and I do just want to get through the scenario. Um, but here's what happened. So the Charles army here got wrapped up in Venetia and was destroyed by Massena with an outflank from Napoleon. They then changed things up. Napoleon sent Kleber down here to hold Boulogne because there is a Neapolitan army that is slowly. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. It's actually up to here, so there is a chance that the Neapolitan army could make a difference. So that is why Kleber is down here with some units to hold Boulogne. Bonaparte is taking command of the army of Germany, is heading north through Switzerland to basically contest whatever the coalition might do. Wurmser's army has been demoralized, and he's now had to take several attempts to rally, and he only just rallied at the very end of summer. So the last real coalition army on the map is ready to fight and is in Bavaria, kind of far away from the critical zones of attack. You might ask, what happened to the British? Well, that's quite interesting. So Pichegru has chased the British out and basically fought down to the nubs where the combats were skirmishes, and just managed to push out the British army such that they're sitting on Amsterdam with just barely enough strength to try to besiege it, which is going to be tricky, and they could die at any moment. Here, the British remnant army fought against a cavalry flight that was over here, and they killed each other. So a sacrifice play by Joubert has removed much of the danger to France, and I might add, a Portuguese naval invasion was fought off by the guns of a fortress. So the Portuguese failing to do much here on their own and not getting very far. So as it stands, we are it's looking like it could be a French victory. We still got to play through autumn, and any number of things could come from that. I think the key is going to be how the Austrian army, what can the Austrian army do? There's only so many targets. The real trick is that the French have Ulm, they have Innsbruck with garrisons inside. Even should he try to come down 1, 2, 3, well, he's got to get past this. So the timer's ticking. And I think what we could do is we could have Napoleon come back up here and field off Wurmser if Pichegru can finish taking Amsterdam. And then that's pretty much going to be game. There's really not much left here in autumn. So if the turns go fast because of an early winter, then the French might actually lose because they can't get exactly what they need to get into place. The other thing is we do need to plug a unit into Brussels. So ideally, oh boy, I'm going to have to figure something out. I've got to get somebody into Brussels. That's what Joubert was supposed to do. So we might have to have Bonaparte send a flying column up to Brussels, which I think we can do. So, all right, I'm going to play through it. We'll see what happens. Okay, here we are after autumn. It's looking like it could be a French victory, guys. Pichegru's gotten into Amsterdam. He is sitting on it. He needs to stay there because he didn't have enough strength to refill the garrison, but he is sitting on the capital, and that's good enough. Massena took a flying column and is in Brussels. All good there. Um, Geneva, all this is kind of done up. Kleber came down and destroyed the Neapolitan army. Bonaparte actually, Napoleon was defeated by Wurmser, but then counterattacked and defeated him. As a final last ditch effort, Wurmser actually swung around and ran to sit on Zurich. This is kind of a gamey move at this point, honestly, where, let's talk about it. We are reaching winter 1797. This is the last turn of the game. All forces on the map are exhausted. There is almost nothing left to fight with, which I don't even know if that's really the way the history goes, but you could say, it's not that the lack of units on the board is that there are no armies, it's that all the armies on the board, no matter what shape or form they've taken, are so exhausted that they're not able to operate on the map, and what is there is holding the ground, and maybe that's the way to look at it. Either way, the only operating forces on the map that can move or do anything is Napoleon and Wurmser. And what Wurmser hopes to achieve is that he can go first as the coalition, take Zurich, sit in there, hide inside the fortifications, because he is technically in some supply going to Munich and Salzburg here, though it's a type 1, 2, 3. Oh, maybe he's not in supply. I don't know. I'm going to have to look at that. But I think either way, maybe he had a way to do it. I don't know. It's going to be a near run thing. So we're going to see here in the winter term just what's what. Okay, well, it almost worked out for the Austrians. The Austrians ran down to Zurich, tried to bust down the doors. They actually got in and set up and hold themselves in to spite the French. Napoleon did come down through the passes and managed to achieve a siege out victory and restored control of Switzerland. And we reach what will really be the end of the game. Doesn't matter how many other chits I pull. Militia units over here can't leave Britain. The Portuguese are done. The Neapolitans are gone. There is no other way to affect the game board state. The only actionable moving leaders and units are French units, and as I look over and double check, they retain control of all the important things that they need to be in control of for an outright victory. So there you go, guys. What a long haul for the French and all the craziness that has occurred. I feel pretty good about this one. I think what I'll do is I'll do a, what do you call it, a post-mortem video for the War of the First Coalition video before we move on to other scenarios. I think we got to have fun with Napoleon in northern Italy that I'm not going to play the 1796 scenario at all. I'm just going to skip that because I think we got it, right? We had Bonaparte fighting at Mantua, even though the rules were a little reversed. And in fact, the Austrians got to use the bridge at Arcola-Card, which actually helped the Austrians when they counterattacked, but it didn't work out for them anyway. Yeah, so there you go, guys. The French have won a victory. The revolution persists. The revolution lives on and expands into broader Europe. However you want to look at it. I guess we didn't cause Austria to peace out, which means we don't necessarily get to, in game terms, annex Flanders that way, but you could say maybe at the peace treaties and all that, France will get Flanders, and we'll see the game state situation when we get to the scenarios that covered the war of the Second Coalition, though it's a little bit broken up in the scenarios. You'll see what I mean when we get there. But yeah, that was that. It took many months for us to get here, guys, and I apologize that it took so long to actually get out. I know that all these markers kind of don't help show. It's a kind of a mess because I'm putting these disk control markers on fortresses and also provinces, so I kind of know who controls what when. Might be a little hard for you guys to really appreciate what is being shown here. That the French had control of Mantua, they had control of Romagna, of uh, Milan, Lombardy. So they had control of both these. So they controlled Lombardy, Piedmont, Genoa, all that stuff. It gets kind of kooky in the Holy Roman Empire here, but you guys get it. But yeah, we saw what the French Revolutionary Army assailed on all sides, having used their interior lines of maneuver to eliminate coalition armies, eventually gaining strength over time and being able to fight things out, knocking Spain out of the war, knocking Prussia out of the war, and then these last several years of bitter fighting against both Britain and Austria with multiple British landings that all nearly tipped things over against the French, but eventually got pushed back in some pretty major, significant battles against the Austrians in northern Italy. That over the long haul of things, the French managed to win out via some very desperate maneuvers to keep the dream alive. so, so there you go, guys. French victory, the War of the First Coalition. We'll do a full post-mortem in another video here, since I tend to drag on and talk through things. That will try to collect my thoughts on the scenario itself. We'll see you in that one, guys. Take care. Keep gaming.